Are you like most sales and other professionals who want to grow their wealth faster than what they are currently doing through their company 401k, even with that company match, the stock market, or just plain saving money? Would you sleep better at night if you had the financial freedom to be job optional in just 3 to 5 years through investing in real assets? Maybe you don't want to stop working, but wouldn't it be cool if you could retire a decade earlier than most? And do the traveling you and your family have planned for years while you're still young and can enjoy it? Let's face it, most busy professionals don't have the time or desire to take on more work outside of their W-2 to grow their wealth. On The Wealth Flow, each week we share the stories, the investments, and take a deep dive into the various asset classes that can deliver that accelerated growth to your portfolio passively. That's right. No extra work for you. Instead, we'll put your money to work. Learn what the 95% aren't talking about and join the top 5% of earners today on The Wealth Flow.
All right, welcome to The Wealth Flow. My guest today is Jon Ostenson. He is the founder and CEO of FanBridge Consulting, a 2-time Inc. 500 company. He is a top 1% franchise consultant. Jon is also the author of the best-selling book, Non-Food Franchising. Jon draws his experience from former Inc. 500 franchise president and multi-brand franchisee is helping his clients select their franchise investments. So, Jon, I am looking forward to our conversation today. Thank you so much for being a guest.
Excited to be here, Keith.
All right, perfect. I always love to start, before we dive into everything franchise, everything non-food franchise, I always love to start with your background, where you grew up and what eventually led you into this world of franchising.
Yeah, absolutely. No, grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, and had a great run in the corporate world. Worked for the man for many years, and very thankful for that experience. But I always had that desire to do something more entrepreneurial, and really didn't know what it looked like, and did not have franchising on my radar. When I'd hear that F word franchise, I would think of fast food, and didn't realize there's a whole world outside of that. So about a decade ago, had the opportunity to step in as president of Shelf Genie franchise system and come in and support all of our franchisees across North America, and really fell in love with the model, just seeing how all these diverse backgrounds could come together under a shared system of support and become entrepreneurs. And so fast forward, I've invested in franchises myself on the franchisee side as well as the franchisor side, and started my consulting practice about 7 years ago, now helping others all across the country step into business ownership for themselves through what I call non-food franchising.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm very interested to find out everything. So even myself had a time there where we almost purchased. We actually got all the way through appraisals and everything with our SBA loan, and then it came out that I needed to actually have ownership, or not have ownership. I needed to basically not have a competing W-2 job. And this one wasn't the franchise fault. I knew the owner. I approached the owner of the franchise directly. And so my experience was unfortunate, because I think it could have been a good thing, and I think it would have been a good thing. But I just, at the time, I was W-2'd and I wasn't planning on, and I did not want to lie and say, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to continue doing my W-2. And, out of the advice of my attorney, he said, technically you'd be in violation. And so I had to pull the plug at the last minute on that particular deal. And that was going to be a home health care, or home care, not necessarily health, but home care business. So I'm absolutely interested in everything that you're doing. So tell me a little bit, I guess, about your first experience with your franchise. You said you were with Genie. Tell me a little bit more about what they do and what that experience was.
Yeah, Shelf Genie. It's custom pull-out shelving for your kitchens and pantries, and so it's a nice little niche in the market. It's probably a $60 million market, your market, and we were probably doing $50 million of that. So we were kind of the big player in the space. But we had so many diverse backgrounds that would come in under, again, the shared system of support. So I was running marketing teams that were making their phones ring. We were answering the calls, booking appointments. We had a technology team that was, providing a great technology stack for them day one to step into, everything from an ERP system to CRM system. We had a product development team that was innovating, coming up with new products and solutions, as we would call them, that they could offer to their customer base. So it's just a really neat business model. And we'd have franchisees come to us early on and say, what are we supposed to do? You're doing so many things for us. We were very operations heavy. And our feedback to them was, hey, go out and hire the best people you can, and get involved in the local community, sponsor the Little League baseball team, join the Chamber of Commerce. Anything you can do organically to complement what we're doing on the marketing side, could be a win. So, great business, continues to do very well today. A lot of franchisees are doing, in a lot of cases, doing 7 figures in revenue. I'd say the average is probably, upper 6 figures, but a good number are really making a nice living out of it.
Yeah. Okay. And so you did that one. Did you buy into any additional franchises before starting the consulting side of it? Obviously, we were wildly successful with that particular franchise, and that is I know exactly, and I'm glad my wife can't hear us right now, because that's probably something we need for our pantry and for underneath the kitchen counters to be, just make that space a lot more efficient. So I'm familiar now that you kind of described it a little bit more as to some of the work that they do there. But what are some of the other ones that you've participated in?
Yeah, absolutely. No, we had a pool cleaning franchise. We had a home cleaning franchise, carpet cleaning. I kind of like the property services space. Each of those we eventually sold. In 2 of the 3, we sold to other franchisees in the system, which is a very common approach. Provides for an exit, provides for expansion. A lot of people will approach me and say, hey, how do we get involved in resales of franchises? And I have to explain, oftentimes they never hit the open market because another franchisee will buy them. They get first line of sight into those resales. Currently, my portfolio, I've got 4 different franchises. One that's asphalt paving and line striping. So, parking lots, kind of a non-sexy industry. Another one that provides temporary walls, like containment walls around renovation projects. I've got one, and I've got partners on both of those. And then there's a business in the health space. It's custom foot orthotics for your feet. And we use 3D printing for that one. We sell some shoes and sandals along with that. Small retail footprint. That's one where I don't have any partners. It's just me. And then the 4th one is where I'm invested on the franchisor side. The founder of Shelf Genie actually started Art of Drawers, which is another business in the same genre. And I helped found that. I was the second largest equity holder. And it's been great for Shelf Genie as well. It's created an industry out of and he was very upfront, that, hey, I'm going to start another competing business that's going to be good for the overall industry. And it's proven out. And we now have 40 franchisees, probably 130 territories sold, and people are coming back buying more. It's been a lot of fun to be a part of that.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome. That sounds like a wide, diverse ones, especially with the asphalt company in there as well. Just out of curiosity on the asphalt one, that's kind of a little bit different than some of the other ones that you've done. What was attractive about that one to you?
Great people that I was able to partner with. I'd say that plus a concept that, what I saw with that industry was it's a highly fragmented space, largely unsophisticated competition. So if you're able to come in there and, business in that space is never going to become a household name, right? It's not hotels or food where it's all about the brand name, but instead it's all about the franchisor support and what they do for you. And, they're large enough now, they're getting national accounts that we can draft off of. But great training, great operational support, a lot of marketing support as well. Obviously, procurement of products and services, streamlined, and also you're able to buy in bulk, so you get better pricing. So the value equation is there. And Keith, that's a point I'll make. Franchising is just like any industry out there in that you've got great players that provide great support that are worth every penny that you would be paying them back in the form of a royalty. And then you've got some that are not great, unfortunately, but that's what it is. And that's where we come in and try to help our clients identify the right opportunities, for them in their markets.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I could certainly see that. I mean, the idea of having systems in place, having marketing in place, having that support, having the name brand as well, that people recognize. In some cases, some, it's unless you're out in the market looking for that particular product, you may not have come across it yet. But it's just, to me, franchises seem to be a more polished version of maybe a business that somebody else would have started. Plus, you've got the back end systems and everything that you can rely on. that are proven, that have a track record. And as you mentioned, they're oftentimes they don't come onto the open market. I've got a friend of mine that does blinds franchise, and he just acquired here last year 2 more, and now he's got 2 potential additional ones. But those are just from going to the local, where they'll go in for training and just talking to the other guys, and guys and gals that have them. And some people are up for retirement and that kind of thing, or it just wasn't for them, or whatever the case may be. And in some cases, it was a health deal or whatever. But things come up just like they do in regular life, and those opportunities oftentimes just goes directly to somebody next to you. And for him, it's contiguous now, some of his territory. So literally, there's no gaps in between. So works out really well for being able to just expand his maintenance guys and all that good stuff. So
yeah, absolutely. No, and you can really build an empire that way. My client Nathan, is now up to 12 locations of 2 men in a truck moving service. And he's doing over $40 million a year in revenue. He's built an organization. Every year or two, he comes to me and says, "Hey, John, I'm ready for my next franchise." And I'll introduce him to a couple options. He'll pick one for a young guy or gal in his organization that he wants to promote and give more responsibility to. So he's been able to attract great talent, retain talent, incentivize them because he gives them these pathways to move up. Not everyone's as far along as Nathan is, but a lot of them are on that path where they've now come back, bought additional franchise brands. It's what I call franchise stacking. Or, you can go heavy in one brand and, like you said, acquire other franchisees in the system, or you could diversify and in some cases even find complementary brands. Like you mentioned, home care. We had some clients in Boise recently that bought an in-home senior care business. 2 business partners, they came back 3 months later and said, "Hey, John, what's a good complementary business?" And I introduced them to one that provides wheelchair ramps and stair lifts and mobility solutions within the home, allowing people to age in place. Great complement to, and they eventually moved forward with it. Or I had a real estate broker that had a large team, said, "Hey, I want to start a property management business. Do I do it myself or should I go with a franchise?" Ultimately, he did the pros and cons and said, "Hey, the franchise will get me, a lot further faster. And I'm not going to be by myself. I'm going to have a community of other franchisees. It's almost like a built-in mastermind where we're learning from each other and exchanging best practices. It just shortcuts your path to success."
Yeah, for sure. And so what are somebody listening to the podcast, has maybe considered this or considered leaving the man or their W-2 and looks at this as an opportunity. What are some things that they should consider when it comes to, a franchise?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, franchising is not right for everyone. If you don't have the humility to step into someone else's system and say, "Hey, let's go execute this," right? If you think you're the smartest guy in the room all the time, no matter what room you're in, it's probably not a fit. But for most people, it's my humble belief it does shortcut the path to success and becomes a better path to business ownership. And what's interesting, Keith, is about half of our clients actually keep their W-2 job, and they get this going on the side. They want to build it up and then eventually, in most cases, step into it. The other half say, "Hey, we'll serve as the owner-operator day one, eventually replacing ourselves in the business so we can move on to the next thing or expand." There are franchises out there, I'd say probably 80% of them that allow for that model, but there is 20% like the ones you're mentioning. I'd say in-home senior care does tend to be more owner-operator in nature. Now, is it easy to have a W-2 and get a franchise going?
No.
If it was easy, everyone would be doing it, right? It does take effort. There's a reason why you can make an outsized return. It's because it's not a passive activity. Franchises will call it semi-passive, semi-absentee. They call it an executive model. The idea is you put a manager in place day one. Well, the fact is it still takes work. I call it semi-involved. That's a better term. But if you incentivize and have a great manager in place and a strong franchisor on the sidelines supporting them, a lot of that daily support water can be carried for you and it can make it doable. I mean, we have so many case studies of clients that have gone that path, but I just never want to sugarcoat it. It does still take work, especially if you don't have the right person in place.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that was kind of even true on this one with part of the reason it wasn't performing for the current owners. They were sort of absentee. They weren't at the time, and that's kind of how they qualified. But and then just consulting with a lot of the franchises too, as you know, I had multiple conversations with successful people that had good operations going, just kind of as I'm going through my due diligence and they were like, they're relying very heavily on this person, and we have come in and helped, and this particular person that they've got as their sort of office manager who's doing the scheduling and doing all that is probably somebody that, as much as you want to rely on her because she's, kind of got the system going, she's probably not the right person, to make that thing grow the way it's supposed to and whatnot. So, and so tell me a little bit about for somebody, obviously costs, they're all going to be, different costs to get in. What are some of the expectations that people should have from a cost standpoint? And maybe we should talk a little bit as well about potential for the ability to, bring some equity, but also have some type of a loan to acquire and start up their location.
Yeah, great question. So certainly we have some clients that are getting into things well into the seven figures. I had some clients recently buy 10 trampoline parks. Those are about $4 million each. So there can be some big ones. But most people, I'd say when you look at the franchise fee and the startup costs and several months of working capital all built in, oftentimes that investment range is $150,000 to $300,000. I'd say a lot of things kind of fall in there. Certainly quite a few on either side of that too. But, some people are using all cash. Most people like the idea of leveraging. Banks obviously prefer lending to franchises. That's very common. And you had mentioned SBA. SBA does tend to be the most common loan program out there. Obviously the interest is tax deductible. So a lot of people like the idea of leveraging, even if they're sitting on cash. You can also use a retirement plan. It's got to be from a previous employer, but it's what's called the ROBS program, ROBS, where you roll over the retirement plan into a separate account, purchase the business with your retirement plan. You can then pay yourself a salary. Certainly HELOCs or another path, but I'd say 150 to 300 is kind of a sweet spot where a lot of things fall. And, but then we do have some that are just shy of 100,000, a little bit below, and then quite a few, if it's more of a retail customer facing brick and mortar type concept, you're probably going to be north of 300, maybe 300 to 600. Or if it's more of a service-based business like in-home senior care or home services, property services, a lot of those, some B2B services, a lot of those would fall into the lower range.
Okay. And as far as what are some considerations when it comes to maybe territories and kind of how they work that side of the business that you think are important to kind of consider and maybe be aware of?
Yeah, franchisor wants to set you up for success. So, before you ever sign the franchise agreement, you're going to agree on a territory that, in their system, they'll be able to see the demographics, make sure the average household income or number of addressable businesses with certain characteristics checks their boxes, right? I was just on the phone with a client in Denver, and they're open to Colorado Springs because a lot of things are sold out in Denver. But, their feedback was, certain businesses are going to do better in Denver than Colorado Springs just because the income level isn't at the same place. And so we're talking through that a little bit. Also, Colorado is an incredibly healthy state. It's the healthiest state. And so it's interesting when you look at what businesses would really thrive there versus ones like a weight loss program, probably isn't going to be the right fit. So a little bit of science, a little bit of art to it, but oftentimes, people will buy multiple territories. So territory in a service-based business would be defined as like 250,000 in population, give or take. They look at the zip code level, and I'd say at least half of our clients do buy multiple territories out of the gate, so they have that path to scale over time. But of course, there could be that potential to do it, like we talked about, organically buying other franchisees as well.
Right. Okay. And then what are some other considerations and things that people really need to think about when going through this? I don't know if it's ways to structure it or, personality types. So what are some things that people really need to kind of lay out there and just help guide them to making the right decision?
Yeah, I would say speak with a lot of brands, a lot of different companies. 90% of our clients end up in an industry that was never on their radar. It's because they come into the process open-minded and say, we're a blank slate. We don't know what we don't know. Now, some people say, we know we don't want to do food. We know we don't want to do this. We kind of like this idea. So we'll lean into that and the opportunities that we share with them. But I'd say most people come in open-minded, and what we'll do is we'll present you, hey, if we're in your shoes, based on who's open in your market, who's looking to expand, what we're seeing out there, here are the top 10 or 12 opportunities that we would want to consider if we were in your shoes. And here's why. And kind of take them through these opportunities. They'll usually pick 3 or 4 to have a conversation with. That gets us in the game. And what happens, Keith, is they start to prioritize in their mind the different characteristics they like in the business or don't like, and what's important to them as they're able to compare and contrast. We have some clients that say, hey, we're passionate about helping the community from a health standpoint. We have others that say, hey, I'll be the known as the porta potty king at the cocktail party if it makes me $1 million a year, right? So everyone kind of values different things around the business. So we've seen so many examples and case studies. We can kind of help steer our clients into how they're processing, how they're thinking about it. And as they share feedback with us throughout the process, there are times that we'll bring in another opportunity that we may not have looked at in the beginning. So really what I found is most helpful is, we don't put people through personality assessments. No one wants to go through that on the front end. You know yourself well enough. Let's put real opportunities out there, give you exposure to them. And that's where the magic starts happening. The juices start flowing and you start to, you have that light bulb moment one day and you look at your spouse and say, gosh, that'd be a great fit for us.
Right. And while you might not put them through a personality assessment, the franchise might put them through something, right? Because I know I went through, mine was visiting angels. And so I went through with them on, there was some type of a assessment that I had to score on. And I mean, I don't think they would have turned me down if I was like, but they would have been like, hey, you didn't quite, fit from that standpoint, at least kind of advise me.
Yeah, no, certainly some companies will do that. Some don't. Some are comfortable just having a few conversations with you and understanding your background, saying, hey, he would be a good culture fit or not. It is a two-way street. It's not just you evaluating them, but it's also them evaluating you, to your point.
Okay. And then what about, we've got investors that listen to the show as well, from somebody that's an investor that says, look, my idea of doing this isn't necessarily to leave my W-2. It's maybe I'm already entrepreneurial. I already have some other businesses, but I want to start something that I have the opportunity to grow over the next, 5-10 years to a certain point, and then look at an exit at some point. What are some of the franchises that you see that kind of have some of the better multiples at the sale point?
Yeah, I'd say typically the larger you build the business, you also command a higher multiple. You just have a larger buyer pool. Certainly, we talked about selling to other franchisees. That's going to be your first step. Second step, if no one wants to buy it or is in a position to, certainly you can take it to the open market, put it on bizbuysell.com, use a local broker. There's been research done that's shown that franchises typically trade at a higher multiple than non-franchises in the same industry. So there is value from that resale buyer perspective, which is great. So really, you're building an asset, to your point. You're building a cash flow, especially if you have a W-2 and no other business ownership. You're opening up the tax playbook in a way. The government incentivizes this type of activity. So it is kind of a trifecta, if you will. But no, you should have, if you've run the business halfway decent, there are a lot of people out there that are focused on resales. Entrepreneurship through acquisition is what we oftentimes call it. What's interesting, Keith, and I think this is worth mentioning, because a lot of people come to us looking for existing businesses, and then they're like, oh, well, we've been looking for 3 years or 4 years for an existing business. We've been under LOI, the terms haven't shaken out, someone outbid us, the due diligence, this or that. Yeah. All that time we could have spent building a business. We wish we'd started with a franchise in the beginning. So now they're coming around. And so buying an existing business can be a good proposition if you find the right one, but oftentimes it takes a lot of time and effort to find it. And there's risk. You're paying a premium for an existing business, assuming everything's going to stay the same. But whenever you have a change in ownership, oftentimes you may lose key employees or key customers that you didn't count on. So that's where I'm a big believer that if you start in a franchise system, it just gives you optionality down the road. You can always buy a business as well down the road, but it just gets you in the game, gets you playing. And I've just seen so many case studies that support that.
Yeah, makes sense. How about, kind of along that same line, starting a business, doing it as a franchise. Obviously, it's going to vary from franchise to franchise and depending on what, industry it's in. But in general, timelines, what are we looking at before we make this investment where we start to break even and then start to, turn profit? And in other words, how long does it take? I mean, I could imagine going into a business and thinking, look, it's going to take several years before we get it to where we want it to be, maybe to the tune of 5+ years, before it gets to really where I want it to be. But in general, how long does it typically take to get it up and running with most of them? I know that's kind of...
Yeah, if it's a service-based business, you can get it up and running pretty fast, within a few months. If it's a retail-based business, there's going to be site selection, build out, and then you're up and running, right? So a little bit longer. From a profitability standpoint, I'd say the biggest factor there is, are you running the business yourself or are you hiring a general manager too, right? If you're hiring someone, you've got to cover that nut, right, from a financial standpoint. But let's say you're running it. I mean, there are businesses that you could be profitable in month 3, right? But I always want people to go conservative. Let's assume 6 to 9 months. In some cases, it may be 12 months, but you're going to be able to get a good feel for it going in because you're going to talk to other franchisees in the system before you ever sign. You get to hear about their experience and their ramp up, and then you build out your pro forma, like best case, worst case, most likely case. And so what I call profitability is, turning a monthly P&L that's, in the black, right? You're not having to feed the business money, but instead it's paying you back. I mean, we've had clients that do over $1 million in year 1 in revenue. And, that's usually translating to pretty healthy bottom lines. But again, I never want to bank on that. I want to go conservative. So I'd say, you're probably at a run rate between month 12 and month 18 that you're starting to feel good about. Again, this is assuming that you've put effort in, things are going halfway decent. You start to pay yourself back. But again, any losses that you take early on, any investments in the business, those are all tax deductible, right? And you're also able to write off so many other things, pay your kids in the business, home office expenses, things like that.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. Yeah, it's something that, somebody that maybe is W-2 hasn't necessarily thought about, but there are definitely tax advantages to running a business and being able to write all that stuff off. What are some of the ones that are more popular on the service side and that do seem to have, I guess from a value standpoint, which ones are kind of at the top of Jon's list right now? As if I was going to do this over again, or if I have a client that's kind of fits this mold, here are the top several that I would recommend.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say we're seeing it. I'll just kind of hit on different industry types. I mean, we're seeing a lot of interest in home and property services. A lot of smart money flowing in there, a lot of private equity getting involved in a strategic way. Things that AI is not going to replace, but only enhance, right? And again, if you're going into a fragmented market, you're able to come in with more of a white collar approach to a blue collar industry. So, it's things like dumpsters and insulation and flooring and cabinets. And I just had a client, sign for a pool cleaning franchise this past week. There's so many different niches within the home and property services space. Certainly anything related to health and wellness is popular. There's one that just launched that we're extremely excited about. It's a partnership between Gary Brecka and Tony Robbins and Sequel Brands, Anthony Geisler was the founder of Exponential Fitness, which was Pure Barre and Club Pilates. Anyway, they've come together around a longevity clinic, and I've got a bunch of clients engaged in that one. Hormone replacement peptides combined with all the hyperbaric chambers and cold plunges, all under one roof. Certainly anything related to seniors. Senior in-home senior care is popular, but there's also other ways to play that space, whether it be more senior fitness or more senior brokerage for nursing home type, and you become the expert in that space in your local area and kind of the broker. Kids. I've got a client flying to Omaha next week for teen driving school. It's again a highly fragmented market, and really no other franchise in that space. We've had clients get into do very well with youth soccer and swim lessons, and people always spend on their kids. Certainly the pets, pet grooming, pet boarding, all that's big. And I'd say franchising tends to be a little more B2C oriented just from a volume of opportunity standpoint. But there is a B2B niche as well. And there's some opportunities we like, whether it be, shipping experts, consulting like freight brokerage to cost reduction to business coaching to insurance adjusting, so many different niches, again, that you would never think about until the opportunities are right in front of you. And you're like, gosh, that's a pretty good idea.
Yeah. It makes sense. Yeah, there is so many of them that it is kind of wild. And that's interesting on the healthcare one or the peptides and all that good stuff. I've got a lot of I do some of the Tony Robbins like Life Force and some of that stuff personally. I actually was just recommending that to a friend of mine yesterday. And it's good. And I think those things, those are sort of somewhat of the wave of the future, just being able to get your blood work done, on a quarterly basis, and having doctors that actually, in this case, if you can either go to them or they can come to you when it comes to the nurses that draw the blood, and then you do a televisit. I mean, to me, it's just like, it's way more convenient than having to go to I still go to my, primary care physician once a year, but had to have this in between. It makes a huge, huge difference. So
totally. Yeah.
And so what are some other considerations, some other things that people really need to know when it comes to franchises in general?
Yeah, I'd say if we kind of start at the beginning, I mean, there's a lot of noise out there, right? I mean, you've got several thousand franchise companies and everyone's putting their best marketing foot forward when you search for them online, right? And
For sure.
just a lot of noise. If you've come across the top 100 franchise list from a publication, typically companies are actually paying to be on that list. It's a PR move for them. So that's where we come in to help Keith. It's entirely free to work with us. We simply get a referral fee from the brands on the back end. It's a sales and marketing cost for them. Nothing's passed on to our clients. So it's a nice, clean model.
That's interesting.
Very much like a real estate model if you were to go buy a house, but instead you're buying a franchise. So you never pay us a nickel. And that's where we come in. I mean, we've been in the industry. I've got the relationships out there. Oftentimes I can move my clients ahead of other candidates in the pipeline with these brands. We can help you understand what's going on behind the curtain, what we're seeing, all these different conferences we're going to, and the networking and the relationships that we have. So really there's no downside if you're going to buy a franchise. I mean, I'm biased, but I believe pretty strongly that your best bet is to go through us, and we're able to help you kind of get set up for success out there. So I'd say that would be the last thing I would mention is if you're buying a house, you're going to, or make a big investment, you're looking for expertise. You're not just trying to do it on your own. So that's where we come in to help.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And you're out there all the time doing this. And clearly, being on the Inc. 5,000 list multiple times, obviously you built a wonderful business there. I've gone to different shows and stuff because they'll have the various shows that'll come into town. But
you never have the top ones at those shows. I mean, if they're going to spend a weekend in a windowless big old room, like those aren't the top brands.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. It was funny how many like of the instant, like almost vending machine type companies and stuff that were at that one where, it wasn't exactly what I was looking for when I went, and I was a little disappointed at least to the one show that I went to. So, but yeah, so you know which ones, and you've been able to research which ones and you have clients that have gone through. So there's a whole bunch of experience from that standpoint. And then what about, just in the process itself? So obviously, maybe we can just walk through, like if somebody's interested, as you mentioned, you're going to kind of talk with them and kind of get an idea, of what makes them tick. And then, maybe recommend 10 to 12, you said, and then out of those, maybe they pick a handful that they feel like they want to talk. How does one go about talking to these folks? You line up something and kind of maybe just walk us through that process.
Yeah, absolutely. We keep it very streamlined. It's primarily executive level folks that we work with, and they don't have a lot of bandwidth, so I want to make it easy on them. And again, I believe the value comes from talking to opportunities, getting them in front of you. So first off, I'd say, come out to our website. We'd love to share a free downloadable copy of our book, Non-Food Franchising, 90 pages, easy read. We've also sold thousands of copies, but yeah, we'd love to share a free copy. And it'll help you kind of connect the dots and understand, franchising, how it works. It could be the right fit for you. But yeah, would certainly love to jump on a 20, 30-minute call with any of your listeners, get to know them, share some thoughts from my perspective, give them some resources. And if they'd like to take a next step, I would then share with them, hey, here are the top 10 or 12 opportunities that are available. They're looking to expand in your market. Here's what I like about each one of them. They would pick a couple. We would then make those introductions for them, tee up those introductory calls, and then we hold their hand through the process. So we serve as a sounding board. If they want to jump on a touch-base call here or there, we will give them feedback to help them process what they're learning. We could always iterate and look at other companies along the way. But then we've got funding resources. They can help them with the retirement rollovers or the SBA loans. We've got legal resources that can review the agreement for them. So it's really a one-stop shop, all things franchise search that we provide to our clients.
Okay. No, and that's helpful. There's all those things along the way that you have to have. And then for somebody that's maybe purchasing an existing, I guess I would imagine there's probably one even on a startup or a new franchise. Is there some kind of an appraisal process? I know there was one for the one that I went through where they looked at the existing business, they looked at the revenues. From an SBA loan standpoint, is there an appraisal process for a new franchise where they look at I would imagine they look at the company. I don't know. What does that look like, I guess?
Yes, the SBA, it's called the SBA registry. And so they're looking at the actual franchise brand and saying, hey, we're going to adopt you onto our registry or not. And most of the ones we work with are on there. And so it makes it really easy on our clients because the lending institution already knows enough about the brand. They already had the due diligence done. And so they're able to, really, we don't run into any issues. Like SBA can be tough if you're buying an existing business out there, if you're starting a business. When it comes to franchising, it's pretty easy.
Yeah. Okay. And then what about success rate on these? We talked a little bit about the value of having, kind of a playbook and understanding that this is a business that they have so much invested. If they allow you to be one of the franchisees, they've got a lot invested. They want you to be successful. But they need you to be successful because in turn, that kind of helps their percentage of people that have gone out on this venture and actually, found success with it. So what is typically success rates with the franchise?
Yeah, and everyone would define success differently, right? As far as what level you're at. I wish I had visibility into the P&Ls of my clients. I don't, but where I get my validation is when they come back and they buy additional locations, they come back, buy additional brands, they come back
for sure
and refer their brothers to me. That happens all the time. So I've personally placed close to 200 clients over the last 6 or 7 years, and there are 13, maybe 14 that are no longer in business. And it's really interesting when you look at that. Now, that breaks my heart. At the same time, you'd say, well, that's a pretty good success rate, right, for small business ownership. But when you look at those and dissect them, Keith, there have been a couple of cases where maybe the franchisor didn't live up to what they laid out as expectations in the beginning. And that's what I hate. That's what we try to avoid at all costs, right? In most cases, it's that the franchisee wasn't willing to follow the system and try to do everything their own way, or they got into it and realized, hey, I'm not cut out for business ownership, or this is more work than I thought it was going to be. Like somehow they came in with the wrong set of expectations and decided, hey, or maybe my general manager left and I'm a physician and I don't really want to go hire another general manager. I'm just going to sell it, maybe take a haircut on it. So, proud of our success right now. Within that, there are going to be varying levels of success, right? And so just because you're in business doesn't mean you're absolutely killing it. I'd say, again, we feel pretty good about the feedback that we've gotten over time and what we've seen. But certainly in any case with a large sample size, you're going to have some people that are at different levels. But, I got a note the other day from CEO of a franchise, and he said of our top 10 franchisees, 3 of them were FranBridge clients. I feel that we work with kind of a higher caliber individual, and they usually find themselves in the top tier of the systems.
Okay. And then what are maybe some of the franchise opportunities that, obviously with all of these, right, there's a path to, a lot of income and, but it may not be one location, right? I mean, you may be able to say, hey, look, even one location, even if you're performing above average, it's going to be this. But in order to really get to maybe whatever that number is that you're looking for, you're going to need to get the second location going, and then third location, and in some cases fourth and fifth. But what is a business or a franchise that a single location can spin off some really, really high income for the owner?
Yeah, I mentioned the trampoline parks earlier. If you're going deep on one location there, you're spitting off $830,000 in net profit. But it's also it's also a big boy franchise. It's a big investment. But a lot of the services, kind of like we talked about, because services are really popular today. I'd say, and this isn't scientific, but just where I feel like the median is probably around $500,000 in revenue for a single territory. Maybe it's $400,000 with some. There's some were $275, maybe the top. There are others were $775. But I'd say $500 is probably a pretty good median. Oftentimes the margins that we're seeing are 15 to 20%. There are some that are higher, some that are lower, but let's just call it 20%. I think that's a good median. Yeah, that's $100,000. Does that get you out of bed? Probably not. The juice has to be worth the squeeze. So if that's the model that you're stepping into, it's, hey, let's purchase 3 or 4 territories to kind of expand over time. And then, from there, it could be that we eventually buy other franchisees, or that we start another brand, or buy another franchise that complements this one. So I'd say that's kind of a good barometer. I mean, again, we have some that we work with where the margins are well north of 20%. Typically, it's not day one, right? Maybe you get to that run rate at month 12. We're heading into year 2. You're now at a run rate of 20% plus to the bottom line. Any business, you're going to have to cover your fixed cost before it becomes all variable, right? In most cases, and that's where you start driving the revenue, dropping in the bottom line. So a little bit of art, a little bit of science to how you dissect all of this. But again, one of the things I love about franchising is you're able to get that information going in. Not every franchise puts it in the exact same buckets in their item 19 of their FDD, but that serves as a data point. You're able to get some data from the franchisor. You're able to talk to other franchisees, get some data from them, make your own assumptions. So at least you're more than back of the napkin math, right? You've got something to go off of.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's a good point. And, just in my own experience with going through and looking at when we were going through kind of the appraisal process of the existing businesses, I found it fascinating to go through and just look at the list of all of the various, whether they were independent or whether they were franchised, but a list of those businesses that had actually sold. And then I could say, well, surely I'll be better than this one, or whatever. But you could at least see that there was a business. And I would encourage like anybody that is looking at this that maybe does have a W-2 that's, looking for a change. Maybe, you have options, right? You can get out there, you can get another job, or you could potentially start something. And, obviously for some folks, it's going to be better just to say kind of in your lane of W-2. But for somebody that's looking to start a business, there's so many other advantages. It's not just the income, right? I mean, John, as when you may make the same, if you make the same income as you do with your W-2, you also have the wealth that you're creating because this business has an inherent value that could later be sold. So there is a equity that you will build from your sweat of starting this business up that I think, may sometimes get overlooked. So.
Yeah, and there's the intangible side. I mean, if you have kids, maybe you bring them into the business or you teach them the business one day, or if nothing else, maybe they're younger, but they're watching you build something. They're watching you chase your dream. They're not watching you sit on the sidelines and talk about it. I think a lot of people get into consuming content and thinking about it, talking about it and saying, one day I'm going to do this, one day I'm going to do that, looking at listings, but they never get off the couch and take a step. And it's like, hey, life is too short. Like, have that impact your community in a positive way. Now, in a lot of cases, you're going to work hard. I joke that I'm the hardest boss I've ever had, but man, it pays off. I wouldn't have it any other way. I'll start my day at 6 a.m. sometimes, doing some work before I drive the kids to school. But you know what? I took my family on 6 international trips last year. Like I've coached my kids' sports teams. I've always worked around, what that I value the most. And you get that ability here and you don't have to ask off for vacation. Like I'll be playing golf with someone and they'll say, yeah, I got to ask my boss. I'm like, oh, I cringe a little bit because I've lived in that world, right? I've been there, done that and never looked back. And so I encourage people to at least think about it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, John, this has been great. How can people find out more about you, about your company, if they listen to this maybe set a little spark in their mind, and they want to start exploring this? As you mentioned, there's, they don't pay anything for having this professional consultation. So certainly worth it. If this raised your eyebrow at all, it's worth kind of reaching out to John and exploring it.
Yeah, easy steps. Just come out to our website, franbridgeconsulting.com, FRAN bridgeconsulting.com. Share your email address. We'll reach out to you with a downloadable copy of our book, which is a good starting point, as well as a link to my calendar if you'd like to jump on a call, learn more. Certainly follow me on LinkedIn as well. I put out a lot of content.
Perfect. All right. And then I've got two other questions I ask every guest. And one would be just any advice you would give somebody who's maybe just starting out in their investment journey. And maybe in this case, that investment is them starting a business.
Yeah, no, I think doing your research and considering different opportunities. I personally invest in real estate directly and indirectly. I invest in oil and gas, crypto, public markets. And franchising. I believe it's all of the above approach. So I don't think that, pigeonholing yourself in any one is wise. I think you need to be diversified, but understanding, how much bandwidth you have, what role you want to play. Are you more active or passive? And what does that look like? So, I've made good investments. I've also made some bad investments and learned from those. So more than happy to chat with anyone, but it's all part of the game. And I view it as a game. It's a lot of fun. I'm teaching my kids now, and I would take the same perspective.
Yeah, no, I think that's great advice. How about a book recommendation? It doesn't have to be franchise related. Obviously, as you mentioned, anybody that reaches out, they'll get a free copy of your book. But what's another book maybe that you've read that has been impactful?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, certainly. My book, we would love to share that. I think it's helpful. But I mean, I always have to say, I think the Bible's a great book and one that I read daily. But then I would say The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. That's a book that I recently had my wife read as well. It's not rocket science. It's very understandable basics, but it's all about the idea of compounding. And so, to my point earlier about getting in the game, it's getting started, and if you give yourself the time, little steps every day make a big difference in all areas of life. So the Compound Effect would be one I'd recommend.
Yeah, it's a great book. Okay. Well, thank you, Jon. This has been awesome. I appreciate you being a guest on The Wealth Flow, and I think we'll call it a show. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Keith.
Thank you.
Being that you're still here, I trust you found value in this episode. I personally wish I would have known these guests and strategies when I started my wealth creation journey. Go to wealthflow.capital to subscribe to our newsletter. And as a free gift, we will send you our quarterly market report and the top 10 things to look for in an investment opportunity. Take a minute to give our show a rating and review. Help us reach 1 million professionals by subscribing and sharing this episode with someone you know who could also find value in it.